Well, good morning to all of you in the Pacific time zone, and good afternoon to everyone here in the East Coast, and good evening to our friends from Israel and India. My name is Aman Thakur. I am the Senior Program Manager at Indiaspora. Indiaspora is a US-based nonprofit organization that has created a network of leaders from the global Indian diaspora aimed at fostering the wider Indian diaspora from around the world to be a force for good. That's our mission, and that's what we're hoping to do. And that work of trying to inspire the diaspora to be a force for good has become particularly important with what's been happening in India this last few weeks. And we just want to address that before we dive into the event. We've seen India go through some very dire situation with the spread of COVID-19 in the country. And a lot of our work has been focused on mobilizing the diaspora, not just in the United States, but around the world, to support India during its time of need and support our fellow citizens and our families, friends, and networks back home in India. And so for us, in some way, this event is an extension of some of that work because, what you've seen is just yesterday, the Israeli ambassador and the Indian ambassador to the US met in Washington, D.C. to figure out ways that the two countries and the three countries can collaborate to help India in its time of need. That's exactly the kinds of ties and the kinds of connections that we're hoping to foster and highlight in this event between the deep values and shared connections between Israel, India, and the United States and their diasporas. At least here in the United States. And so, for that reason, we've brought together this event to bring together examples, to highlight those shared values and those shared connections. And so, Indiaspora's engagement with the Israeli government goes back, many years. Our first ever Global Connect delegation, our first ever delegation to outside of the United States was to Israel in 2017. We're so excited that this is another way in which we can engage the Israeli government and its consulates here in the United States. And we're hoping that this is the first of many more such events to come in partnership with the Israeli government. And so with that, I would like to pass it on to our partner, the Deputy Consul General in San Francisco, Matan Zamir. Matan, over to you. And thank you so much for being a terrific partner for us in this event.
Thank you so much, Aman, for your words. And I think during this process of planning this event, we really became friends. So I want to thank you, Sanjeev, Emar, and the team of Indiaspora for partnering with us alongside the Consulate General in Miami and the great speakers that we're all gonna hear today. I can say this morning, this evening, this afternoon, because the great thing about this event is that we have people watching from the United States, from India, and from Israel, which is exciting. And the original intent behind this event was to purely celebrate the partnership, to highlight the commonalities and the connections between the Indian American community and the Jewish Israeli communities here in the United States, but also the countries, the United States, India, and Israel. With, like you said, with everything that's been going, the terrible situation in India, we're changing the tone of the event a little bit. We're gonna have some time to highlight the good, but we also want to focus on like I said, the terrible situation on the ground all over India. I can say that in the last few days, the Israeli government, both on the government level, but also Israelis as people and NGOs and civil society in Israel has been working hard to do whatever we can as the Israeli government, but also, like I said, the Israeli people, to send aid to India. So we're going to talk about that. But we're also going to talk about the amazing partnerships and commonalities. For that, we're going to start by hearing a panel of two congressmen, Congressman Bera from California and Congressman Ted Deutch from Florida, who will talk about what the United States is doing to fight the COVID pandemic in India, but also talk about what brings them together and the communities here in the United States. And then, as a perfect example of this partnership, the trilateral partnership, we're going to hear from David Reed. David Reed is an engineer at NASA who knew firsthand Ilan, Ramon, and the Indian American astronaut known as KC, and he'll tell you more about them, who were both on board the Columbia and really knew how to it's the best example of on the ground strive for excellence, but also great partnership. And then we're going to have a panel celebrating female excellence with Vidya Shah, who's joining us from India, and Reena Pushkarna, who's joining us from Israel. And we'll hear about that later in the program. I just want to let you all know that we have a really great moderator for this program. Her name is Dr. Smita Siddhanti. She is an active member of Indiaspora and the president and founder of Endyna, Inc., an environmental and management consulting firm working with several US federal agencies, and she's a nationally recognized expert in public health risk assessment and management. She worked extensively with federal agencies, the states, and multilateral organizations to develop regulations, policy, guidance, technology, and evaluations to management approach to environmental protection. And in addition, for being actively involved with various philanthropic efforts, her passion is in enhancing rural entrepreneurship and livelihood in Indian villages, especially among women's group. So that's our moderator, Dr. Smita. We're going to start with a recording of her panel with the two congressmen, and then after that, we're going to go back to live and hear the two other panels. So Smita, please, to you.
Hi, I'm delighted to be honored to be in a company of the two renowned congressmen, both uniquely associated with their heritage with India and Israel, which is the topic of our discussion. First of all, thank you both for your time and all that you do for the country and the world. After my introduction, I'd like to invite you both to provide your remarks for your efforts to enhance the ties and linkages between world's important democracies, India, Israel, and USA, and their diasporas in the US. I'll then ask you some questions, and if you have time, the questions from the audience as well. So Representative Bera is no new name to others here. He has represented California's 7th Congressional District in the US House of Representatives since 2013. The 7th District is located just outside the capital of California, Sacramento. Representative Bera is currently a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, where he serves as chairman of the Subcommittee on Asia, the Pacific, Central Asia, and the Non-Proliferation. He's also a senior member of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. In addition, he's leading New Democrat Coalition, a group that's dedicated to pro-economic growth, pro-innovation, and fiscally responsible policies. Congressman Bera is a first-generation American born and raised in California. He spent 20 years as practicing physician, eventually serving as the Sacramento Chief Medical Officer and then the Dean of University of California, Davis. Congressman Bera is the longest driving Indian American serving in Congress. So proud to have you with us. And let me introduce also Representative Ted Deutch. Congressman Deutch represents Florida's 22nd District, home to communities in northern Broward County and southern Palm Beach County in South Florida. He's now serving his 7th term in 117th Congress, which is starting 2009. You've been in the Congress, which is awesome. He's the chairman of the House Ethics Committee, a senior member of the House Judiciary Committee, and a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, on which he serves as the chairman of the Middle East, North Africa, and Global Counterterrorism Subcommittee. Ted's priorities in this 117th Congress include advancing the security interests of the United States, Israel, and our allies. So welcome both Congressman Bera and Congressman Deutch. Delighted to have you give us your time. Would you like to start with your comment, Bera?
Sure, happy to start with some brief opening statements, and really pleased to be doing this both with the organizations, but also with my good friend, Congressman Deutch. We've been talking about this for a while. So, I'm pleased by the organizers moving this along. When we think about the vibrancy of the Jewish American diaspora and the Indian American diaspora, there are lots of commonalities. Strong values of entrepreneurship, of family, historic ties between India and the Jewish community in Israel. And I think as we've thought about this from the foreign affairs perspective and the values of democracy, look at Israel as the leading democracy in its region and India as a leading democracy in its region, a trilateral alliance between the communities just made a lot of common sense. And we've been in conversation with both embassies as well. So to see this happening and to think about ways that the two diasporas can work together to advance the values that both diasporas carry, but also to work together to bring the strategic partnership that seems to be developing between India and Israel to more common fruition. So again, I'll keep my comments short so we can get to questions, but again, I'm thrilled that we're having this dialogue. And I do think from America's strategic national security and foreign policy perspective, but also from the perspective of Israel and India, this trilateral relationship and friendship could be very powerful.
Thank you. That's well said. Representative Deutch, please.
Well, thanks very much, Dr. Siddhanti, and I'm so thrilled to be doing this event, participating with my good friend, Bera. This is, I think, exactly what we ought to be doing. I mean, Ami and I are two members of Congress who have been serving for a while. We're both proud Americans. We both proudly represent our districts, and Ami's also a proud Indian American, and I'm a proud Jewish American with a deep connection to the state of Israel. And we have this opportunity through events like this, and I hope that this is really just the start, to bring together not just two members of Congress, but really two communities in the United States who are doing such great things in our country while retaining such close ties to India and to Israel. The opportunity that we have here to highlight the important work that's being done, to highlight the role that the House Foreign Affairs Committee that Ami and I do in strengthening the relationship between the United States and India, United States and India, Israel, and then to find ways to bring together these three great countries that we all care about. That's really so important at a moment. And I also want to get to questions, but I'll just finish with this. We're at a moment in time where the challenges that we face are so significant, from COVID to the, as Ami alluded to the very real threats to democracy in so many places around the world, that when we have a chance to come together and talk about what these three great democracies can do to improve the lives of our own peoples and people around the world, and to solidify and strengthen and expand democracy, that presents an opportunity for us to all come together to do that. And as I said, I hope this is just the start. I'm so glad to be a part of it, and I look forward to the discussion today.
Thank you. Very, very well said, because I just wanted to quickly say personally, in my own family, I have people who have immediately married into U.S. Israel. I mean, my own uncles and my cousins are from both sides of the aisle. So very delighted to see the cultural, not only the cultural partnerships, but the partnerships we've had in the values and education and democracy and values of family and entrepreneurship that we are bringing to U.S. as well. And taking it back to our countries is very important. So I do have a number of questions that I like. The most important of it is we are under the shadow of the biggest crisis right now of pandemic when we are doing this. And as we know, the rapid rate at which things are increasing in India, especially right now, is suffering through the largest crisis, or almost a dire straits. with 3,000 deaths per day, and increasing and estimated to go up. I'd really like to get, and I understand that there's a turn of US assistance is now enhancing pretty rapidly. And I think globally, all the countries are. So I'd like both of you to shed some light on it. Representative Bera, go ahead. If you can.
Certainly our hearts go out to the suffering that is being reported in India and that we're seeing in front of our eyes. And it's certainly that what we went through in the United States over this past year, and to all the people around the world that are being impacted and suffering the effects of COVID. India is in our thoughts and prayers, as well as everyone around the world. Yeah, I'm very pleased that the Biden administration has stepped up and is showing global leadership, and not just providing vaccinations, but also some of the raw materials, because we know India has a mature pharmaceutical sector. And if they have access to those raw materials, they can also rapidly produce vaccines, both for India, but then also for the region, that partnership. I also, Israel has done incredibly well with its COVID response and vaccination, and shows us that path forward. But I'll put my doctor hat on. We all know that for us to end this pandemic, we have to vaccinate the world. And I think this is a place where the United States, working with Israel and working with other countries that are getting ahead of the pandemic, now have to focus on the rest of the world. And again, very supportive of the Biden administration engaging and sending supplies to India.
Any specific initiatives that you know of that are that we can inform our audience who are very curiously waiting to know?
I think the announcement yesterday that the 60 million or so doses of AstraZeneca vaccine that the United States has or will soon obtain, releasing that supply both to India, but then to other affected nations, I think is important. But then in the immediate term, getting PPE, getting testing supplies, getting oxygen, which is sorely needed. I know my home state of California yesterday also announced that they'll be sending supplies to India. So I think this is a rapid mobilization effort to relieve the immediate suffering, tamp down this current surge, but then also to prevent a recurrent surge. A message to the people in India would be, continue to do those precautionary measures, avoid big gatherings, keep your masks on, and again, this is a time to really stay isolated until the caseloads come down.
I do hear that yesterday there was a big meeting between the Senate group and the Indian CEO group of 130 or 150 CEOs that gathered to amass the efforts of public-private partnerships, and then I understand that there's also DoD mobilization of oxygen concentrators, and there's a lot going on that should give us hope that things will get better, and that we are all connected, and that help is on the way.
Absolutely.
And that's the message. And yeah, Representative Deutch, could you shed some light
Sure.
on your...
Well, first of all, this is a good example of how fortunate we all are that Ami Bera is a member of the House, not just
Right.
because he's a great member of Congress, but as a physician. He has so much to add. All I would point out is just to further what you just said, that no country is truly safe and secure until every country is able to contain the virus. And I agree with Ami completely. The efforts of the administration, of the Biden administration right now, to recognize what's happening in India and to mobilize to respond to it are critically important, both to provide assistance, and it's true with vaccines, and we talked about AstraZeneca, but also I think you're right to point out that the efforts on oxygen, which I know is in such short supply in India, which is so critically important, and so we continue to pray and hope for good health and recovery for those affected in India and all around the world, but especially the leadership that the administration is showing with the support of the United States Congress to really step up and do more and really be there at this critical moment is what's so important and what we're so glad to be a part of.
And we are so glad that you both are where you are and can help us, and especially Ami Bera, who you really are in the right place. And I know that a whole lot of Indian organizations like API and the Indiaspora and Wheels and others, everybody's helping, trying to send things from here. And we would need some connections here and there to make sure things are happening. Air India is just picking up a whole lot of things free. And also a number of doctors are moving forward and doing that. So thank you for your support ongoing on this. And we'll, of course, I'm sure the organizations will be in touch with you both to make things happen. So switching gears a little bit to where we are really looking forward with both your backgrounds and inspiration that you can create to create linkages higher. I mean, the whole idea is to have these two communities that are very active. So I'd like to know from you, Representative Bera, please share some example of what you think are successful initiatives or partnerships that you see in business, culture, community spheres that enhance the ties between the communities.
No, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the world of technology and entrepreneurship, you see, great Jewish American leadership in the tech space, as well as obviously Indian American leadership in the tech space. So I think there's areas to create collaboration. You also see vibrant communities in very similar locations in the San Francisco Bay Area, New York, New Jersey area, in Ted's home district in South Florida. I also think, that there's ways that, that we can use the technology. And in this case, our state of California that's suffering through a drought has been working closely with Israel that has great water technology. And I think this is a place where we can take some of that entrepreneurship and technology and address some of India's challenges as well. So I just think there's great areas of collaboration with great Indian American companies, Jewish American companies, and entrepreneurs to help solve not just our own domestic challenges, but also challenges around the world.
I mean, indeed, there's a lot that both countries have to offer. Are there real partnerships that you think have happened, or would you like to see some? How would you see stronger ties between these communities? What would you advise us or the viewers, both Indian American and Jewish Israeli viewers?
You want to take that, Ted?
Ted, go ahead. Yes.
Sure. Look, thanks. In this is a case where the community, and Ami and I have talked about this, the Jewish community in America is so supportive of the U.S.-Israel relationship, works and views it as something that they can put their hands on and really help to improve and affect the people of Israel, just like the Indian American community feels the same way about India. So here we have an opportunity for our American friends to look at what's actually happening between India and Israel as an example. The cooperation on urban water systems that came together after, I think, more than a decade of joint research and development, the investments in the country's respective water technologies, as Ami referred to, that's really important. And the new $40 million India-Israel Industrial R&D and Technological Innovation Fund is exactly the kind of thing that we can build upon. When we look at what India and Israel are doing together, it only makes sense that the Indian American community and the Jewish American community, those of us who have sort of looked straight ahead, can now take from the relationship that exists the chance to broaden our own involvement and work to strengthen that relationship between India and Israel and to bring together our respective communities here to help accomplish that. I think there are fantastic opportunities ahead.
Just what you said about the innovation opportunity, could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. Well,
I personally didn't know much about it.
Sure. So the effort that Israel and India have put together to create joint funding for research and development, that's exactly the kind of thing that I think I should be looking to support in Congress, and to help find ways to fund that kind of cooperation. And I also think it's the kind of thing that the great entrepreneurs that we have here in America, here in our country, who again have consistently looked for ways to use that entrepreneurial expertise to help build up India, to help build up Israel, can all work together. I just would quickly add one other thing: the Abraham Accords, which expand ties between Israel and the Arab world, also present the possibility, I think, of enhanced cooperation farther afield, like India, bringing even more countries together. So there's so much that's being done already. We just need to capitalize and to bring together our respective communities to help accomplish that.
This might be a very good start of that. I mean, we as I said, the Indian community took a while to come into fruition in a big way. I mean, they arrived a little later than the Jewish and Israeli communities did. But now is the time when all communities have pretty much, quote unquote, arrived, that now is the time that they can look outside and linkages. So truly, this is a great start. And we are looking forward to a bigger start. If you want to say anything in concluding, both of you, I know your time is limited, but please, your any concluding remarks?
Yeah, I think this, I'll keep it short because I know we're closing, but I think this is a great start. I think, Ted and I have often talked about, in a post-COVID world, maybe we can go to, some of the places where you have vibrant Indian American and Jewish American communities, and again, start to build local coalitions as well. But again, I think this is a great start. It's not an end.
Awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thanks to Indiaspora, thanks to the consulate of the Pacific Northwest, but also in Miami for helping to organize this. And I would just build upon what Ami said. I think it's fair to say that for the Jewish American community that cares deeply about Israel, they know where I am. They know the kinds of things that I've worked on to help strengthen that. For the Indian American community, they know the same thing about Ami and his commitment to strengthen the relation between the United States and India. So we would like the opportunity to go out and bring people together and build the kind of relationship that he and I have, and that the communities already have, but can really lean into doing so much more to strengthen our country and opportunities with India and Israel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and look forward to all of us working together to make a better world. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
I have a good one.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Ami.
Greetings to everybody in person. Hello, namaste, shalom to all. As part of this event, we wanted to celebrate and honor and shine light on examples of how people of Indian and Israeli and Jewish origin come together in the United States and their personalized excellence in their respective fields. And there is no better way to do that than to honor the memories of the two astronauts, Indian American Kalpana Chawla and Colonel Ilan Ramon. They both were Israeli and Indian origin astronauts that came together in the fatal mission of Columbia, and that was in 2003. So we have with us someone who has worked with both Casey and Colonel Ilan and Ramon during the preparation for Columbia, and his name is Mr. David Reed. Now, Mr. Reed is currently the Florida Operation Director for 10-Shot Inc., which is located in NASA's Kennedy Space Center. He has 30 years of experience in developing and managing equipment flown on the Space Shuttle, on the International Space Center. So with that, I'd like David to come and give us a little more about, we invite him to share his stories about what he knew about them a little bit and the lessons from Columbia. David, please take it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk today. So I'll give you a little bit of my experience. So during the final mission of Space Shuttle Columbia, I led a team of engineers and scientists that developed 3 spaceflight experiments. 2 of these experiments involved plants, and 1 involved these tiny worms called C. elegans roundworms. That's not real important to know, other than they're tiny worms that are used a lot in research on Earth as well. That's where I met Ilan, Ramon, and Kalpana Chawla, or KC as we knew her. Ilan was selected as what is called a payload specialist. Payload specialists are typically not career astronauts, meaning they don't do things like fly the vehicles themselves or manipulate the NASA equipment, but they are responsible for conducting science investigations. They work with these experiments. We call these experiments payloads when they fly in space. KC was a mission specialist. Mission specialists are career astronauts, and her expertise was guiding the robotic arm on the space shuttle. I had actually worked with KC on a previous space shuttle mission, mission STS-87 as well. So as a part of our job, we had to not only develop these experiments, but we had to train the crews on how to use them. This is where I really got to know astronauts, and specifically both Ilan and KC. What I recall of them was that they were very attentive. They asked a lot of questions, which always shows engagement, and we like to see that. And I think they truly believe that these experiments were important. Sometimes people wonder, and we don't have time to go into all the details of why people would look at plants specifically or roundworms, but suffice it to say it is an important thing, otherwise we wouldn't do it. So twice we trained this crew, and the final time was just a few weeks before flight. The crew was great. Both Ilan and KC like to joke around. They, like I said, they're very excited about the upcoming flight. No flight to space is routine. So it's always, I think even people that fly lots of times would tell you that each flight is a once in a lifetime experience. But what I recall is talking to them was more like talking to old friends than astronauts. So we study organisms like plants and roundworms in space because they're less complex than studying people. All living things evolved here on the Earth in the presence of gravity. When we take them to space, sometimes we learn something unexpected that leads us to better understanding of things here on Earth. We'll take those plants, for example. If we remove gravity, we can study how plants respond to just light. It wasn't until much later, actually after the Columbia mission, that I learned that Ilan's name translates to tree in English. And I thought that was really appropriate that he was a part of a plant experiment with a name that means tree. One of the plant experiments was completely lost with Columbia, but the second plant experiment survived and was actually recovered from Eastern Texas. Inside of this experiment were some tiny temperature sensors that recorded everything that went on during the mission. They were buried deep inside the experiment, which protected them from the heat of reentry. And I'm proud to say those helped NASA flight engineers to piece together the final moments of what happened to the space shuttle. But even more remarkably than these plants that survived were the tiny worms that I talked about. The worms survived the heat of reentry and impact, and they too were recovered. And this amazing discovery led to a broader question about whether or not life can truly move from one planet to another, maybe buried deep inside a meteorite. Before the loss of Columbia, there were a few people that thought that this was even possible. Nobody would ever suggest that any research is worth the lives of the lost or the Space Shuttle Columbia vehicle. But I think that both Ilan and KC would be very proud to know that they contributed to this bright end of an otherwise tragic story. And I'm very proud to have been just a small part of their experience in the space program.
Thank you. That's very, very good to know, and truly honored to know that you were part of that and that you knew these two wonderful people who contributed, and perfect example of the contribution of American Israeli and American Indians in the space mission and the technology advancement of the country and the world. So thanks again for honoring them. So that our next segment here, which is very personally close to me, is two wonderful women that we want to celebrate. One is from both Indian and Indian American and Israeli American, Indian origin and Israeli origin, actually. So this is our celebration of women entrepreneurship, which, as I say, is close to me because I am a member of board member of TIE Global, which is the Indus Entrepreneurs, and I'm leading globally initiative called TIE Women, that is for enhancing women entrepreneurship across the globe. So there are 36, there are about 40 chapters among India, Israel, as well as US of this global organization where women entrepreneurs are coming together and working. We are all working to make a bigger dent there. So I have two very prominent women here, Vidya Shah and Reena, and I'm going to talk about, introduce them, and then we're going to listen from them. So Vidya Shah is the executive chairperson of Edelgive Foundation, the philanthropic initiative of Edelweiss Group, which is a financial group. It's India's diversified financial group. And Edelweiss is, so over the last decade, she has steered the growth of Edelweiss social investments to develop Edelweiss Foundation into a strategic philanthropic organization. Over the last 11 years, Edelgive has been instrumental in growing over 150 organizations, scaling their budgets, impact, and reach exponentially. In addition to Edelweiss, Vidya is also on board of various philanthropic organizations like Agastya and Center for Social Impact and Philanthropy, and we are going to hear about it from her. Vidya earned MBA from Ahmedabad, IIM Ahmedabad, and with that, I'd like to introduce Vidya. Welcome to the program. And then the other person is Reena Pushkarna. Now, Reena has been is also connected with TIE in different ways, but her brother I know is personally always on the board of TIE with me. Reena is a celebrity chef, restaurateur, business entrepreneur, and key figure in the Israel-India business and cultural arena. So born in New Delhi to Jewish Iraqi-born mother and an Indian father at the age of 16, she married Vinod Pushkarna, a captain in the merchant navy. Reena sailed with him for 9 years, and during which she learned to cook from the chefs she met on these ships. And in 1983, the couple and their 2 children emigrated to Israel. And since then, she has opened Indian restaurants across Israel under the Tandoori Kohinoor chain, and later led her family business to open Israeli restaurants in Singapore and Macau, connecting people across Israel and Asia to one another through food. She also produced a line of kosher frozen India food to supermarkets in Europe, Canada, and the US, and also appeared as a celebrity chef on a number of Israeli TV channels. So with that, so proud to have you both here with me. I'd like you to first open your remarks, and then we can ask questions. Vidya, please go ahead.
Thank you so much to you, Smita, to Indiaspora, and to the Consulate of the Republic of Israel for having me here today. It's an honor and an absolute privilege. I think, just a little bit about my journey and the importance of women in particular in entrepreneurship. I did start out as an investment banker. I was in investment banking for over 11 years, and then joined and founded the Edelweiss Group along with my husband and a group of other founders. Edelweiss is a leading diversified financial services group in India with, financial services businesses such as insurance, wealth and asset management, credit and capital markets. But I think we are a group of first generation entrepreneurs. So the importance of philanthropy and it was very high. So was a high degree of social consciousness. And so therefore the foundation very much focused on issues of development in India, both through grant making and also building the capacity of NGOs in the country. Of course, we're currently in the midst of the grim second wave of COVID, and a lot of our attention currently is actually directed to helping organizations on the ground with all kinds of help, both medical and health related as well as humanitarian. But I think a cornerstone of our work has been in the area of women empowerment and a large focus on the economic empowerment of women. We are running a very large campaign along with the Ministry of Women and Child Development in India called Udyam Stri, which is really focused on building the ecosystem that will enable more women entrepreneurs. We do believe that the growth of women and the development of focus on women is very important, not just from a social lens, but also from an economic lens. So I'll stop there and look forward to any other questions that you may have.
Yeah, so let me ask you questions before I move on to Reena. Tell us a little bit about, is your impact for women focused on mid-tier cities or rural or anyone?
So our work is actually focused on 14 districts in India, chosen really based on key indicators around women's participation in the labor force, as well as key issues such as gender-sex ratio, early marriage of girls, enrollment of girls in schools, and so on and so forth. So I think while the issue of gender equality or gender parity is an issue that all of us all around the world face in various degrees, in India it manifests itself both in through the social norms and behavior, as well as through restricted participation of women in the economy, which overall then impacts quite negatively, I strongly believe, both in terms of GDP as well as in terms of other human development indicators. The recent World Economic Forum report, for example, has seen India drop almost 20 places on the gender parity index. So I think the issue is really important. Our focus is more on semi-urban and rural areas, but I think the issue is all encompassing as far as the country is concerned.
Absolutely. And do you have any specific criteria that you use to select these enterprises, or tell us a little bit about your approach?
Yeah, I think, and this is a statistic that is available all over the world, but in India in particular, issues around gender get less than 1.4% of the total philanthropic spend, whether you include individual philanthropy or you include philanthropy from CSRs. And so it's very, very important to look at not only funding, increasing the amount of funding to gender, but also looking at it as far as gender is concerned as a continuum from what we call services, that is ensuring that girls go to school, that maternal health and infant mortality are important issues, as well as other issues related to health, but also the rights-based approach, which enables us to look at issues of patriarchy, look at issues of norms and behavioral change, but also looking at how more women can get into the workforce and building social empowerment also through economic empowerment.
Awesome. So you are also enhancing, obviously, entrepreneurship in this direction, right? So you look for social impact enterprises, and how do you define that? Or is it just defined in all the terms that you mentioned in the indicator?
Yeah, no, so I think specifically when we come to entrepreneurship and the financial participation of women, we do believe that there is, India, one of the issues we always face is a very, very high degree of informalization, and therefore the lack of financialization overall, but specifically among women. So our approach is actually threefold. One is to choose great organizations, NGOs on the ground who can work directly in communities, building women's participation in the workforce. So through livelihood programs, we have a lot of programs across the world, across India, which work with the National Rural Livelihoods Mission, which is a government programs, and really focused on building skills as well as employability for women. We also look at tying women to a lot of the schemes that are available from the government of India, specifically focused on women. And the third thing is really building entrepreneurship through a combination of access to finance, access to mentoring, as well as access to opportunity and thinking around scaling. We find that a large number of women-led enterprises in India are actually very, very small. They employ less than 10 people. But we found that the impact of entrepreneurship when it comes to women is very, very high, because they tend to employ more women. They tend to balance home as well as business, and most importantly, use the profits from their enterprises to to spend on education and health for their family. So overall, we do believe that an important force, for us to focus on is really building entrepreneurship of women.
Awesome, awesome effort of public-private partnership and scaling that effort. Good luck with that, and hope to connect with you much more related to our women entrepreneurship effort. So Reena, please welcome Reena Pushkarna. I'd like to hear from her directly on, go ahead, do I see her on the camera?
Yes, you do.
Hi,
Okay.
hello.
Hi.
Tell us about yourself and your whole venture. It's so fascinating.
Mine is the spicy stuff.
Yes, go ahead.
It's really an honor to be a part of this panel. And I thank you and the Israeli Embassy for bringing me on. As I said, I wear two hats, Indian and Israeli. And since the day we made Aliyah, that was 39 years ago, I have always tried my best to bring both together, whether it's to do with food, politics, or culture. To start with, it was very, very difficult to sell Indian food in this country. I think one of the most difficult in the world. People didn't want to touch Indian food with a pole.
Okay.
Being a woman chef, it was all male chefs all around. So it was difficult for them to digest. But slowly being different and not giving up on my heritage and my culture, I became a very important part of this institution called not only Indian food, not only Indian culture, but to be today called our girl from India, or our curry queen from India. So it's really a big compliment.
Awesome. Tell us about how you grew this whole thing from the beginning. That must have been a challenge. I think we froze, your camera froze, Reena. I think she's having a little bit of connection issues.
I couldn't have done it alone. The idea was for us to come together. At that time, my parents were.
You're having difficulty with your audio as well a little bit. But while Reena is fixing herself, for the audience, if you have any specific questions, but I do have to say that she's one of the, there you are. Good to have you back. Go ahead. Sorry, the technology doesn't always work perfectly. Yes.
So it was very difficult in the initial stage, because they wanted to know how come I speak such good English, and why do I dress like this, and am I in a fancy dress all the time? And the Indian immigration into Israel was more from the Jewish communities of Cochin, who went into agriculture, the Bnei Israels, who were more a workforce, the Baghdadi Jews, who literally migrated to Australia, to the States, or to England. And right now coming in are the Ben Menashe group, which are on the border of Sikkim, they are Indian, but they look Chinese, and the Israelis cannot believe there are Chinese Indians coming into Israel. But going back to the food, which I'm a very important part of, at that time, there were no gourmet restaurants in this country. I was allowed to bring in my 110 chefs, who were mostly from the Oberoi chain and the service. And slowly by surely opened my 8 restaurants, but it took a long while. People thought the red chicken was very spicy and they wouldn't order it. And later on, there was like, right now, there is like a whole generation that has grown up on my chicken tikka. And they've come one step ahead to chicken tikka masala. And today they'll teach me what is Indian food, because all the backpackers are coming into India. And
I'm sorry, we're going to give her a little bit of space because of the challenge she's having with technology. Connection, hopefully it'll come back. The internet is not always perfect everywhere. But what a fascinating story from all of us who are hearing this, that I don't know if you guys are familiar, the viewers, at least from India, might know that there was a beautiful movie that was made about an Indian guy who moved to Europe in some remote town and started an Indian restaurant, and how much difficulty he had in getting it going. And then after that, everybody loved the food. So Reena's story is a little different, but hopefully a lot more successful. And it's good to know these ventures and adventures people have taken to come forth and make their mark, not only in entrepreneurship, but also culturally binding the countries together. Vidya, are you still with us? And do you want to say any concluding remarks? Oh, here she is. Reena, go ahead.
Okay, it's all been around food. You know, everybody, Israelis love to eat. So everything has happened around food, whether it's the Oslo peace talks that started in one of my restaurants. Wow. And then when you saw the famous handshake of Prime Minister Rabin and Chairman Arafat, and the president said that we'll take you back to where it all started, and they zoomed in on my tandoori Tel Aviv. So it's small things like this which happened in big ways, whether it was the first date of my Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. And everything went around Indian food, which was really not accepted. So it was quite challenging, but I succeeded, because I say never give up, never say never, and just move ahead with what you know you want to do. So every Indian that comes into Israel today, whether it's a new immigrant or whether it's a business person, always visiting us. And my one advice to them always is, Israelis are lovely people. Indians are beautiful people. The culture is very, very similar. The food is very well adopted. So why not do great things together?
Awesome.
And that's been my motto, and that's how I succeeded with Vinod at my side, because I always say that I walk 2 steps behind him, but think 2 steps ahead of him. And my children and the grandchildren today, with my daughter settled in Singapore and my son back in Israel, we start with new inventions, all surrounding food. And today, there was one time in Israel, you couldn't even get ginger, but today Israel has grown a lot with their agro-technology, and they produce everything from ginger to Karela, which they didn't know what it was all about. So things like that, slowly, but we moved ahead.
Awesome. Highly appreciate your effort and adventure and taking this on, and what inspiration to everybody else. For it's not just technology that brings or science or education, but culture and food that actually brings the people together. and the whole idea of diaspora meeting and the countries coming together has a lot to do with food. And we all meet on food. Our greetings around that are actually hearts meet there. So thank you for doing
Yes,
that.
I'm a part also of the Lion of Judah, which we are 16,000 strong Jewish women from all over the world. One of our programs has been bringing in the Ethiopian Jews into Israel. And we help very much with all the aliyah of the different groups coming into Israel. And we are all women, and I'm their only Indian counterpart. So I take pride in that too. And we have our organizations, which we take care of the young lone soldier girls or soldier boys coming into Israel of Indian origin. So food plays a great part, even from the backstairs.
So not just the food, but also your entrepreneurship is to be celebrated.
Definitely.
Sorry,
Yes.
I have a short time limit
That's
here.
right.
But such a pleasure meeting you, meeting Vidya.
Same here.
And you guys are great examples of not just ambassadorship between India, US, and Israel, but also let's just celebration of women entrepreneurship. So thank you for being here. With that,
you.
I want to come make this concluding remarks happen from interim Israel consulate in Miami, Revital Malka. Please take it, Revital, and thank you everybody for joining. And hopefully we all learned a lot. And this is, as we said, is first of many series and many initiatives. Look forward to it. Thanks. Revital, take it from here. Thanks. Bye, Reena.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Vidya. Bye.
Well, hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for this wonderful and meaningful initiative to celebrate and bringing together both diasporas, the Israeli Jewish and Indian in the United States. I think that one of the conclusions that I take from this discussion is the fact that although the connection and both ties that the diaspora maintain with their homeland, they both strive for excellence and integrating and contribute to the economy, science, and the society in the United States. I want to thank Representatives Ami Bera and Ted Deutch for starting this initiative and taking part in this discussion for all the panelists, Vidya Shah, Reena Pushkarna, and David Reed, and to our wonderful mediator, Dr. Smita. And last but not least, to Indiaspora team, Ami Tucker and Sanjeev, and to my colleagues from San Francisco, Consul General Shlomi Kaufman and Deputy Consul General Matan Zamir, for giving the honor to the consulate in Miami to take part in this initiative. For sure, this is just the beginning, and we will continue with more mutual cooperation. We ask you to spread the word and bring more people from both communities to attend future events. I want to send again our thoughts and praise with our friends in India. Thank you all for participating.